Behind me are some of my weirdest handhelds. The Game Boy, the Game Gear, the PSP, the Nintendo DS, the handhelds of my childhood. But what about those handhelds that were just in our head? Like, for example, what if there was a Game Boy Advance that had the foldability of the SP but the ergonomics of the original GBA? Well, with the modders of today, we now have that. And there's a lot more weirdness where that came from. So I'm going to walk you through some of the most bizarre handhelds I have in my collection. I do want to preface that I did not mod any of these. I am much more of a collector than I am a modder. I will, however, put all the modders' info in the description if you want to check them out yourselves. And also keep an eye out for the individual short links for each one of these as we go. And I guess let's start things out with that Game Boy Advance with the SP screen. I think a lot of us first saw this mod done with the Retro Future, and if you haven't seen that, I'll link it below, but this one kind of speaks for itself. The Game Boy Advance felt great in the hand, though the screen was exposed, and the SP had the portability, but gave you hand cramps ready to give you carpal tunnel. So this mod takes the best of both worlds, and honestly succeeds for the most part. We have the original body of the Game Boy Advance, with the hinge of the Game Boy Advance SP, and an upgraded screen. This is such a funny mod. Obviously, you just don't expect a Game Boy to look like this, but it's the little nuances that make it even funnier. Like when it's closed, having the screen partially off the body, which doesn't exactly keep the screen safe. I also think that since we know the DS exists, it's weird to see a design like this that also has this huge blank space on the bottom, which could be utilized for another screen, which something similar does exist out there. But yeah, this was a mod I was on the lookout for a long time, and is definitely one of the showcase pieces of my collection. This next one is actually one of the earliest mods in my collection. This is the Yoshida Portable GameCube. GameCube games were easily some of my favorite home console games, and it had always been a goal of mine to take those on the go. And while there are some high-end emulators out there, nothing is going to beat native hardware. The Yoshida takes the motherboard of a Wii and cuts it down into this portable form factor, meaning this is actually a Wii inside here, and through backwards compatibility, bam, we have a GameCube portable. Now, portable Wii mods come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but what I love about this one, and what I think makes it way more unique, is this design. It's essentially just one big GameCube controller, which I'm a big fan of because it makes GameCube games way more natural to play. And even though it's kind of a clunker, it just checks all the right boxes for me. Now we're going to look at a mod that I probably get the most head turns on, the Game Boy DS. The DS Boy. The Franken Boy. Franken Game Boy. Whatever you want to call it, this thing is an absolute monstrosity in the best way possible. The handheld has the body of the original Game Boy, the upper screen and hinge from the Game Boy Advance SP, and the insides of a DS Lite. So this is actually a Nintendo DS, and yes, it really works, though it doesn't exactly look like the original. Huh? And I often get asked if it's comfortable to play, and I usually say, look, it's not uncomfortable, it's just more of a conversation piece, not really your daily handheld. I think what can make it uncomfortable after a while are where the L and R buttons are located, just making it feel kind of cramped, though I actually find games utilizing the stylus to feel a little bit more comfortable, but just don't expect this to replace all of your handhelds. And just something that I find funny about this one, that even though it has the body of the original Game Boy, it cannot play original Game Boy games. Okay, this next one is just ultimate nostalgia. Back in 2000, Burger King came out with these Game Boy Color toys. Some were little ball games, some were water squirters, and there were a ton of them, but this one I have is actually modded to play Game Boy games. Inside is a Raspberry Pi, making this a fully capable retro emulator. I remember the campaign for these toys back in the day, and to hold one in my hands that is actually a working Game Boy is just crazy. Obviously, it's a pretty cramped gaming experience, but again, more of a novelty piece than a handheld collection killer. But hey, it has wireless charging. And I just wanted to highlight a couple more that I could not pick between. The Thummy, which is so hard to say for some reason, and the Tetris McNugget. The Thumbie is pretty well known in the retro gaming space. It's a fully functioning gaming handheld, which is crazy. And while every retro game creator, including myself, has dubbed this the world's smallest Game Boy, just know that it can't play actual Game Boy games, just some of the classics and some developer games. This, on the other hand, plays one classic game and will make you hungry at the same time. This is a recent release from McDonald's Japan to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Chicken McNugget. It's a decent handheld. I don't know, it's not the best Tetris gaming experience I've ever had, but this design, unmatched. It just seriously feels like this was a Happy Meal toy back in the 90s, and to be honest, maybe we should bring back more of this style for the current handhelds. Now this really only scratches the surface of my handheld collection, and I just wanted to show these off because I think it's crazy how some of these consoles were made, especially when it comes to mashing up different consoles. And every day we really find more and more ways to bring these old consoles to the next level. What was your dream console? Let me know in the comments. And let me know if you want to see more of my handheld collection. And as always, stay childish, and thanks for watching.